Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you love aviation stories and real-life crash investigations explained in simple words, you're in the right place. But before we dive in, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss another story from the skies. Now imagine this. You're at Barcelona's El Prat airport on a February night in 2001. You board a brand new Airbus A320, a plane so fresh from the factory it barely has 1,000 flight hours on it. It feels solid, modern, and trustworthy. You settle into your seat, buckle up, and think of nothing more than reaching Bilbao in less than an hour. The weather is calm, the crew is professional, and the captain has more than 10,000 hours of experience. In other words, everything looks perfectly safe. But by the time you get close to Bilbao, this short routine flight will become a terrifying reminder of how quickly aviation can turn into chaos. This is the story of Iberia Flight 1456. The crash that shook the aviation world, exposed hidden flaws in Airbus technology, and forced one of the biggest aircraft manufacturers on the planet to rethink how its planes interact with the humans who fly them. The A320 was a pioneer in aviation because it was the first commercial jet to feature a fully digital fly-by-wire system. Unlike older planes where the pilot's yoke and pedals directly moved the control surfaces with cables and hydraulics, in the A320 the pilot's inputs were sent to a computer, and the computer decided how to move the plane's control surfaces. It was revolutionary, safer in theory, lighter in weight, more efficient, and much smarter. The system was designed to protect the plane from human error. But in the case of Iberia 1456, this very system that was supposed to protect ended up working against the pilots in the most critical seconds of their careers. On February 7, 2001, Iberia Flight 1456 prepared for departure. It was operated by an Airbus A320 with the registration ECHKJ, built just the year before in 2000. It had logged only 1,149 hours of flight time. For perspective, that's like a brand new car with barely 2,000 miles on it. This jet was considered safe, modern, and as reliable as aircraft get. On board were 136 passengers and 7 crew members. The captain was a 42-year-old with 10,105 hours in his logbook, a seasoned professional. His first officer was just 27, but had already logged 2,670 hours, respectable for his age. And in the right jump seat sat a 24-year-old trainee pilot, with just over 400 hours of flight experience, observing and learning from the experienced pair. In the cabin, 4 flight attendants prepared for what should have been a quiet evening hop across Spain. The safety demonstration was given, passengers fastened their belts, and at 8:40 p.m. local time, Iberia 1456 rolled out onto the runway. The engines roared, the plane accelerated smoothly, and moments later the A320 climbed into the dark sky above Barcelona. Cruising altitude was reached quickly. Cabin lights dimmed, and the passengers settled in. Some opened books, some put on headphones, while others simply gazed out into the night sky, watching the twinkling lights fade below. Nobody could have imagined the turbulence ahead. The flight toward Bilbao was uneventful, but as the plane neared its destination, conditions began to change. Bilbao is surrounded by hilly terrain, and even on clear nights, the approach can be tricky. On this evening, the skies appeared clear, but the winds were deceptive. At the airport surface, winds were measured around 10 knots, not dangerous by themselves, but hidden gusts reached up to 25 knots. These shifting winds were about to create a phenomenon dreaded by every pilot: a microburst. A microburst is a sudden, powerful downdraft of air that slams toward the ground and spreads outward. Think of it as an invisible hammer of wind, crashing straight down and then rushing outward across the runway. Pilots describe microbursts as deadly traps because they can instantly rob an aircraft of lift. One moment you're descending normally, the next you're falling at hundreds of feet per minute, fighting physics itself. This invisible killer has brought down several planes in the past, most famously Delta Flight 191 in Dallas in 1985, which ended in tragedy. As Iberia 1456 approached Bilbao's runway 30, the autopilot was disconnected at about 400 feet, as was standard practice. The captain took manual control to complete the landing. Everything seemed routine, until suddenly the microburst struck. The aircraft's descent rate spiked, sinking at 200 feet per minute, far too fast for a safe landing. The ground proximity. Warning system blared in the cockpit. Sink rate! Sink rate! The pilots reacted instantly, pulling back on their side sticks to lift the nose and arrest the descent. In most airplanes, this would have been enough to at least soften the landing. But not this time. The A320's fly-by-wire system intervened. Its computers calculated that the sudden nose-up movement risked causing a stall. In other words, the system thought the plane was about to lose lift entirely if it climbed too steeply, so it overrode the pilot's inputs. Instead of allowing the nose to rise as the pilots commanded, the system forced the nose down. This left the crew helpless at the worst possible moment. The jet slammed into the runway nose first. The force shattered the landing gear. Sparks flew as the plane skidded across the asphalt, its engines scraping against the ground. Inside the cabin, passengers screamed as overhead bins popped open, bags tumbled, and the smell of burning rubber and metal filled the air. The captain attempted a go-around by applying full power, but it was too late. Iberia 1456 skidded off the side of the runway and finally ground to a halt. For a few terrifying seconds, there was silence. Then the crew snapped into action. Evacuate! Evacuate! Doors opened, inflatable slides deployed, and passengers scrambled out into the cold night air. Miraculously, the plane did not catch fire. All 143 people on board survived, though 25 were injured, one seriously. 7 passengers were taken to local hospitals. For everyone who escaped that night, the memory would be unforgettable. A routine domestic flight turning into a violent crash landing. The aircraft, however, was a total loss. In aviation terms, it was written off as a hull loss. This was the 9th hull loss of an Airbus A320 since its introduction, and it raised urgent questions about the fly-by-wire system. How could such an advanced plane, designed to prevent crashes, end up overriding experienced pilots in a way that worsened the situation? The Spanish Civil Aviation Accident and Incident Investigation Commission launched a full inquiry. The investigation stretched over 5 years, combing through flight data recorders, cockpit voice recordings, and Airbus's software design. What they found was startling. The crash wasn't caused by pilot error. It wasn't even primarily the fault of the microburst. The main culprit was the flight control software itself. When the microburst hit, the angle of attack changed rapidly. The A320 system misread this as an imminent stall and activated protections that blocked the pilots from raising the nose. The computers ignored the context, that the plane was in fact sinking dangerously fast and desperately needed a nose-up input. The pilots had responded correctly, but the software's rigid programming betrayed them. Investigators also noted that weather forecasting at the time made microbursts difficult to predict. The crew had no warning, and once they were inside the phenomenon, they had only seconds to react. The pilots did everything right according to their training, but the software misjudged the situation and overruled them, making recovery impossible. The Commission issued 4 safety recommendations. The most critical: Airbus must update its flight control software so that stall protections would not trigger in cases of rapid angle of attack change caused by wind shear or microbursts. Airbus responded by rewriting its systems, ensuring that, in future, human pilots retained more authority in sudden, extreme situations. The lessons of Iberia Flight 1456 went far beyond Spain. Aviation experts worldwide recognize the importance of balancing automation with human judgment. No matter how advanced technology becomes, it must work with human intuition, not against it. Weather forecasting and pilot training were also emphasized. Airlines invested more in wind shear detection systems and simulators, began including microburst scenarios to prepare pilots for the unthinkable. Today, the Airbus A320 family is considered one of the safest, most reliable aircraft in the world. Millions of passengers fly on them every week across the United States, the United Kingdom, Europe, and beyond. The changes made after the Iberia crash helped ensure that no other crew would face the same trap of being locked out of saving their own aircraft. But for the 143 people on board that night in Bilbao, the memory never fades. They walked away alive, but they lived through a nightmare. The moment when cutting-edge technology and human skill clashed in the cockpit. And only luck kept the outcome from being far worse. So what do we take from this story? First, that every accident in aviation teaches a lesson. Second, that technology must serve human experience, not override it blindly. And third, that safety is always evolving, because every close call makes flying safer for the next passenger. That was the story of Iberia Flight 1456, a crash that changed aviation forever. If you found this video interesting, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Tell us in the comments what other aviation stories you'd like us to cover. Until next time, stay safe and keep looking up at the skies.